Welcome to the Three Sports Podcast. I am Ben Axelrod. Joining me as always is Craig Lindell from Waiting for Next Year. Big breaking news for us to discuss today. The Cleveland Cavaliers extend their winning streak to a franchise record 13 games.
I'm so happy we waited till Thursday so that we, would have all the time in the world to talk about LeBron and the Cavaliers.
Well, that's usually you'll text me on Wednesday and be like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And I said to you, let's wait. I want to see if the Cavs tie this franchise record for longest winning streak tonight. I think it will be really worth it for our listeners. No, of course, I'm just kidding. Sashi Brown, Executive Vice President, out for the Cleveland Browns.
Yes. With weeks to go.
4 weeks to go.
It appears that the decision has been made. The power struggle went down. Hugh Jackson comes out on the winning end, and I couldn't remember if this was something we talked about on the Three Sports Podcast or the Waiting for Next Year podcast, but and it's not like a crazy I told you so, but I could not imagine a scenario coming into the season where when it came down to a power struggle between Hugh Jackson and Sashi Brown, that Sashi Brown was going to win. Yeah. And as it turns out, Sashi Brown couldn't win a power struggle between himself and Hugh Jackson.
No, and I know there are, I don't even know if it's a lot of fans. Maybe it's a vocal minority. I do think there are a lot of fans kind of flummoxed by the idea that they fired Sashi Brown and have already committed to Hugh Jackson for 2018. I think I know some wanted the inverse. They wanted to fire Hugh Jackson and to move forward with Sashi Brown in this front office. And some just want to clean house completely and think Hugh Jackson has proven that he has nothing that they see in an NFL head coach, that they want him out of the building as well. But it's funny because Jimmy Haslam kind of boxed himself into a corner before the season at training camp. Mm-hmm. He essentially committed to Hugh Jackson then and there and said, everybody's going to be back in 2018. I can't remember specifically if he was talking about the rebuild as a whole or just Hugh Jackson, but he basically made some sort of commitment to stability back in the preseason. And I think the important thing to remember is, you go back to 2016, which I guess was less than 2 years ago, but it feels like eons ago at this point when they hired Hugh Jackson. He was the hand-chosen coach of this ownership group.
They clapped him into the building.
They had a parade down Lou Groza Boulevard.
Yep.
Well, they'll throw a social media parade for anybody these days.
I guess. But this was also Dee Haslam's pick. She was involved in the recruitment and getting him here and getting somebody that was in demand elsewhere.
He was in demand elsewhere. Now, I always kind of...
Which is funny, in the same week that the Giants fire Ben McAdoo.
Right, because it was for the Giants job and the 49ers job. Mm-hmm. And I think if you kind of looked at it as a situation, it actually kind of made sense why he picked the Browns, probably because he figured if push came to shove, he could win a power struggle like this one. But you're right. I mean, this idea that the Browns should have done the inverse and should have fired Hugh Jackson and hired kept Sashi Brown. Whether you think that's what they should have done or not, that was never in the cards. That was never going to happen.
Well, and I think that even we play into this a little bit sometimes when we shouldn't, that let's just look at Sashi Brown on his own merits. Yeah. Let's not try and pretend, it's got to be him or him, like they're on a teeter-totter and one of them's going to go straight to the ground and one's going to go flying into the air. Like, Sashi Brown very well could have earned his own firing all on his own. But we're always trying to figure out, what does that mean for Hugh Jackson? And he won and Sashi lost and football won and analytics lost. And this is, I don't think this is anything to do with analytics. They had analytics before they hired Sashi Brown. They're going to have analytics after Sashi Brown. I think this is more about feeling like he didn't give the groceries to the chef. And he didn't give Hugh Jackson enough that he can win.
Yeah,
period.
And he didn't. I mean, you look at the record, you look at...
But Hugh Jackson's been... Hugh Jackson's made a lot of mistakes, and he's worthy of criticism. But on its own merits, Sashi Brown didn't earn his place in this organization next year.
I mean, bad coaches not only win, go to the playoffs all the time. Like, the NFL is filled with bad coaches. It really is just kind of a carousel where it seems like Bill Belichick and Mike Tomlin are the only guys who keep their jobs past 5 years at a time.
But this level of bad.
Right. Bad rosters don't win. Bad rosters stay bad. There aren't a whole lot of examples of bad teams scraping and clawing their way into the playoffs.
And you can have good draft picks on overall bad rosters or poorly constructed rosters. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really what we're talking about here is Sashi Brown collected assets like a genius. He used picks and got some good players. He didn't construct a roster that could actually win over the course of a football season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's indisputable that whoever comes in here, and Jimmy Haslam kind of said this in his press release, in his statement, whoever comes in here is set up. They have, they have the entire second round that they're picking, and then they have 2 first-round picks, and a bunch of third and fourth rounders.
All the picks.
All the picks. The entire second round plus a bunch of first rounders. An economy's worth of cap space to play with. Whoever is coming in here is undisputably set up. And you can give Sashi Brown credit for that, but you can also look at Sashi Brown's 2 draft track record, which GMs and front office people and personnel people get judged on all the time, and say, there are big red flags in here that we don't want to waste this 2018 draft that we've been building up to with cap space and with draft assets if we don't trust the guy in charge. And that's kind of, that's what the Browns did, and I actually applaud them for it because they want to maximize this 2018 draft, and they didn't feel Sashi Brown could do that. And I guess I'm excited that winning and losing seems to matter again around Berea, because it seems like we fell into this thing where the record doesn't matter. And there is no theoretical difference between 0-12 and 3-9. There's no difference, but you have to start somewhere, and winning and losing is what sports is about, and it matters.
Well, and let's talk about organizational impact, because I'm tired of trying to defend Hugh Jackson because I defend the firing of Sashi Brown. We've seen it. Let's just, for argument's sake, let's agree that Ray Farmer and Mike Pettine are the worst at their jobs. Which one hurt the team more? The one who picked Johnny Manziel or the one who coached them poorly to a bad record and lost the locker room on Sundays? You can survive a bad coach for any number of years. You can survive.
Look at Cincinnati and Marvin Lewis.
If you have players, you will survive, and the next coach will be set up. But anyway, it's
no. But you're right, because Mike Pettine started his first season in 2014 7-4. It was euphoria. This team was in the thick of the playoff hunt heading into Thanksgiving and December and all of that. And then he finished his tenure 3-18. Is that right? 3-18. Did he just become a bad coach? Was he? No, just players were playing better. They had something going, and it fell apart. And that's, I don't think, like I said, Marvin Lewis in Cincinnati, he has been the ultimate just average to below average NFL head coach, and his success has varied based on the roster that he's had to deal with.
Sometimes he gets lightning in a bottle out of the defense. Yeah. Sometimes he gets AJ Green.
Right. And it's,
players play.
No, they absolutely do. And that to me has been the flaw in all of this, because even if you were giving the most general or most positive assessment to Sashi Brown's draft, and you think that Carl Nassib is a high-quality backup defensive end, yes, and you think Joe Schobert can be your middle linebacker of the future, and you think David Njoku is the second coming of Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez, even if you give the most optimistic view of the Sashi Brown era, they made such... You could call them fatal now, because they wound up being fatal to Sashi Brown's tenure as the guy running the show in free agency, not losing those vets, making those fringe roster decisions that we talked about at the start of this podcast, going back to that first free agency where they let Mitchell Schwartz go. I mean, Mitchell Schwartz, I don't even think he's a Pro Bowler, but just to be able to build that stability around your organization, they they just said, we don't care about winning. We don't care about the roster. And this is where it landed you. Like, at the end of the day, 1 in 27 regimes don't survive, and that was their downfall.
And it's not about the guys they picked, because we like a lot of the guys they picked. It's about the guys that they didn't.
I like some of the guys they picked.
It's about the guys that they passed on, that they didn't pick because they traded down.
Yeah.
Or it's about the guys that they deemed totally worthless in free agency. We've gotten a lot of good run this week at Waiting for Next Year over our roster analysis, looking at which guys are stars, which guys are roster worthy, and which guys are just totally replaceable. And the Browns, most of the guys who are high quality, other than Josh Gordon, who has his own set of risk factors,
right,
are guys that we think will be there. Like Myles Garrett, like we both think he's there, but he's not shown us he's there yet.
No.
And so it's all about prospects right now, and a lot of the roster-worthy people, because we went around the rest of the AFC North, and say what you want about how the Browns didn't need this player, Demario Davis or Joe Hayden, but how many roster-worthy middle-class players have the Browns just kind of said, we don't need them, we're too smart to need guys like this, or we're way too smart to pay guys like this.
Right.
And in the end, you end up with a team that can't win on Sundays. And I get it. Hugh Jackson's not been the best coach, but players, as you've pointed out, players supersede bad coaching.
Well, I think we've talked about this before, maybe on the Waiting for Next Year podcast, and we've probably done this for a couple of years now. I call it the jersey test. And you have 2 young sons. But seriously,
yes.
I'm a jersey guy. I like buying jerseys. Whose jersey, if you're a Browns fan, do you feel comfortable buying, making a $110 investment in this person's jersey and feeling good about that you're going to wear it this year and you're going to wear it in 2 years or 3? Like, it used to be Joe Thomas, and even now with
it's Bernie Kosar and Eric Metcalf.
Yeah, but you would say even Myles Garrett, but I don't know if Myles Garrett's going to be healthy in 2 years. I don't know how his career is going to shake out. But I can guarantee you go to Philadelphia, and there's a lot of number 11 Carson Wentz jerseys around. You go out to the soccer stadium in L.A., and there's going to be a lot of Joey Bosa jerseys. I live in Ohio. I've lived in Columbus. I've seen a lot of Ezekiel Elliott Cowboys jerseys. There's nobody's and I kind of say that in jest, but that's a real thing. Like, that's an indicator of high-end talent on your roster, and there is not a player on this roster whose jersey I would feel comfortable investing $110 in.
No, and the last time that I bought a jersey and I ended up getting burned by it anyway was Kellen Winslow Jr.
I had a Kellen jersey.
But at least Kellen, like, I saw him on the field,
right,
and I knew for a fact that he had that high-level talent. I would feel, if I'm making bets, I feel really good about David Njoku. I feel really good about Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
But again, that they project two years out, and we're counting on them right now. And that's the problem. It's not about the guys he picked. It's the fact that there was nobody to hold the place so that they could work in.
Yeah.
We talk about Joe Hayden not starting right away in his rookie year, and he was a top of the round, first round draft
number 6
pick.
Overall.
Yeah.
I think
it's bad plan.
It is. And I think when a part of that bad plan too, a big part of it is defended in trading down from the number 2 pick in 2016. Not only trading down from the 2 pick, but trading to 8 and then trading back to 15. I think that part gets lost in it because it was still a really strong top 10, and you could have had your cake and eaten it too had you just stayed at 8 and picked a random player who went in the top 10. Yeah. I mean, Sashi Brown might still have a job today if they stayed at the 2 pick and picked the name out of the hat of the guys who went in the top 5. Like, yes. That's one of those players, Ezekiel Elliott, is already an all-pro player. Joey Bosa and Carson Wentz and Jalen Ramsey are each going to make all-pro this year. Jared Goff obviously looks like a franchise quarterback, and they could have traded up with Tennessee to get him.
And I don't want to be a crazy person, but how many games would Ezekiel Elliott have won for the Browns over the last 2 seasons? An extra game per season?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, he wouldn't be the difference between a losing record and a winning record.
Oh, no. But is he worth 1 win?
At this point? Yeah.
I would have thought so.
Yeah, certainly.
And he is such a great talent at the running back position that even Hugh Jackson wouldn't be able to go away from the run.
Yeah. You can use him in the passing game, too. Yeah, I don't... it just it was a flawed approach, and it was. I think sometimes we get in this Cleveland bubble where we're so focused on the Browns. People get fired in the NFL all the time for bad records and for passing on players like Carson Wentz and Deshaun Watson. Like, that's the way the NFL works, and that was my concern with this rebuild was, yes, in theory, down the road, this should all amass to something great and special. But the way the NFL works is the league is set up for parity. And this is a regime that came in, and the Sixers comparison gets brought up all the time that Sashi Brown is going to be remembered as the Sam Hinkie of football. Sam Hinkie tore down a perennial 8 seed in the Eastern Conference that was in basketball purgatory and wasn't going anywhere, and figured the only way I can fix this is if we lose enough games that we can pick the players at the top of the draft. The Browns regime, Sashi Brown, took over a team that had the number 2 pick and then traded down. Like, that it's not the same plan. It wasn't the same approach. No. But anyways, it was a bad plan. And it was that was my main issue was, even if this was your plan, there was no way Jimmy Haslam was going to stick with it past 2 years.
No, and plus we need to give some room for this to be about the working relationship itself, and the fact that we're hearing these guys weren't getting along, they couldn't work together.
They weren't speaking.
And people want to blame Hugh Jackson for that, or his power struggle, and I'm not justifying his whispers to the media, but you got to understand where that comes from. And it's hard to just blame the guy who does those things, because for whatever reason, that was the way they decided to build things, and the way that they decided to send it down the road.
What do you mean? I feel like you're speaking in code.
Well, people at Waiting for Next Year, part of the conversation has been the information campaign that Hugh Jackson's been running to Mike Silver and his friends in the media.
Hugh Jackson said today he doesn't do leaks. Just so you know.
Right. I understand that. But
I will say, because I think sometimes I come off as a Hugh Jackson apologist. Hugh Jackson's really bad at handling the media. Like, he's really bad at press conferences, and that is a part of being a head. Like, he says some things that's just like, dude, like, you're publicly friends with Mike Silver, and Mike Silver is serving as a public mouthpiece for you, and you're sitting here and saying you don't do leaks. Like, and
he's not Pat Shurmur bad.
No,
but he's bad.
It's just Hugh Jackson makes it very hard to defend him sometimes.
He does,
that part is frustrating.
Well, and so that came up in conversation this week, that whispering that kind of stuff, that's fireable all by itself. Because you can't. It's hard to imagine a scenario where you can build a team around a guy like that and trust him.
Right.
And I get it. I really
and there's
do.
A track record going back to Oakland of it.
There is. And I'm not defending that by saying that I also understand why they had to let Sashi Brown go.
Right.
So it's tough, man. And again, here we are talking about the Browns in a way like we're ever thinking Jimmy Haslam is the guy who's going to be able to fix them. And again, he's the common denominator of the suck.
Well, it's kind of... So where do they go from here? And it's going to be an all-in, win-now approach.
Do you have a bet? Do you have a bet as to like what the next XYZ moves are?
I would reckless speculation.
Speculation. We should rename the podcast to Reckless Speculation.
Well, on the Dan Le Batard show, whenever he wants to recklessly speculate, they have like a sounder that's his father, like yelling, like, "Let's throw away all your journalistic credibility and play a game called Reckless Speculation."
Oh, so we'd be
so they can't get sued.
Okay.
So this is reckless speculation. Do not put it on any blogs and say report or source, because that's what happens with podcasts these days. Although nobody's doing it with our podcast.
No.
I think Paul DePodesta probably resigns. I think they hire John Dorsey as their GM. There seems to be enough smoke to that fire. And I guess the question would be, do they hire him as a president and promote Andrew Berry? I think Andrew Berry might still be around in one form or another.
That's my prediction.
Yeah.
The Browns are going to hire a president. They're going to promote Andrew Berry, and they're going to be able to claim that it's stability, even though they had to get rid of Sashi Brown.
I think you can claim stability. I think keeping Hugh Jackson is such a bigger piece of the stability than anything else, because Hugh Jackson is the guy who knows the talent, he knows the players. He's the one who deals with them hands-on on a daily basis. To me, he is the stability, whether you like him and most of you don't. If you want to make the argument for stability, I think keeping him is the better case for that, and bringing in a guy who can pick better players.
And for whatever it's worth, no matter what and anything else that's happened, you cannot argue the fact that this team is still fighting for Hugh Jackson and playing hard for him.
Well, that's something, because I feel like this has become a big thing on Twitter, is the GIF breakdowns and of the plays, and Jake Burns does it for you guys at Waiting for Next Year, and he does a great job. And a lot of fans love the stuff. Jordan Zerm does it. I know, a lot of people do it. It's become a big thing. National people do it, and their main takeaway with the Browns always seems to be, hey, these guys are still fighting. They're still playing hard. That's not an indication of talent necessarily. That's an indication that Hugh Jackson has him playing for him. To me,
right.
that seems to be a plus for Hugh Jackson. So I guess my point would be, if you want to make an argument for continuity, keeping Hugh Jackson has way more to do with that than Sashi Brown.
And as you and I have talked about, you can keep Hugh Jackson and still make major changes. You can hire that offensive coordinator. You can bring in a team president. You can replace Sashi Brown with a decision maker who's already been here working on a scouting project based on the Browns and their existing roster. There are ways to fix it. My problem is I don't have any faith that Jimmy Haslam is the one who's going to guide this thing. We have to wait and see, because damn it, we've got no other choice. But it's it's just, so we're talking about it, but I'm still,
well, everything.
I'm not all in on this just because I understand why they got rid of Sashi Brown.
No, and I think I'd have to see who the hire would be.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have faith in anybody Jimmy Haslam hires at this point.
By the way, I also think Sashi Brown's plan was a good one. I think this team needed more assets. I get it. I understand it. But in order to execute that plan, it kicks off other plans, and he failed miserably when it came to the wide receivers. He had a good plan with the offensive line, and hasn't worked out perfectly, but he missed on so many parts of the plan when it came to putting a team on the field that could actually win football games, that I had no faith even though I liked the plan in general.
Yeah.
It's like you and I say we want to go to Florida. I want to drive and you want to ride a bike. I like my plan better. We're both going to Florida,
right? And
I like the idea of going to Florida. I just don't want to ride a bike.
Yeah, I think you could argue it was a good plan, but it was poorly executed.
Yes.
Anybody who says that Sashi Brown had earned the right to run the 2018 draft, I just disagree with. I think there's enough. The first round wide receiver didn't have a catch on Sunday. This is the roster he built, and they've invested very heavily in the wide receiver position over the last 2 years, whether it be the 2016 draft where they took 4 players at the position, or signing Kenny Britt, and Josh Gordon walked off the street having not played football for 3 years and instantly looked like he was playing a different position than anybody who had been trying to catch passes for the Browns.
And you can blame coaching all you want. That's not a matter of coaching, because we've had how many offensive coordinators in here running how many systems with all the way back to Carlton Mitchell and Mohamed Massaquoi and Brian Robisky. We've got receiver on top of receiver over the years. It's not coaching.
No. And so you said you would think it would be a team president who comes in and Andrew Berry's under him. Are you like Peyton Manning type, or?
I don't think Peyton Manning has any reason to come here. I can't imagine a scenario where Peyton Manning looks at Jimmy Haslam, and he knows more about Jimmy Haslam than any one of us, and the issues that family has in Tennessee and the track record here. If you're Peyton Manning, you can write your ticket to X number of opportunities in the NFL, including potential ownership opportunities. And so unless there's a sweetheart ownership opportunity with the Cleveland Browns, and he recognizes that as something that's really, really attractive to him, I have no idea why he would choose to come here.
Yeah, I don't either. And honestly,
I would like it, but
I would like it. I'm a sucker for name value. I do think like
you're a WWE guy. You want
right.
You want a guy.
Well, I like star power. I was just talking about jerseys. Like, bring me the stars. You want a name that
pops.
I cover the Cavs now on a semi-regular basis, and it's just incredible sitting there and watching them warm up. And there's Kevin Love. There's Derrick Rose. Even there's Dwayne Wade, like the third best shooting guard of all. Like, there is so much star power around the Cavs.
Cleveland's own Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, Cleveland lifer Dwayne Wade, Cavs lifer, instilling that Cavs culture. But it's Isaiah Thomas, like it's such incredible star power.
And Tristan Thompson dates a Kardashian.
Yeah. Like, and he's like the 9th most famous player on the team.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's amazing. And I mean, just the Browns don't have that. They don't have that star power.
We've got the guy who brings Jay-Z and Beyonce to games.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
I know. It's
crazy.
It is. Anyway.
And that speaks to your point about jerseys. The Browns got nothing.
No, and they're terrible jerseys. Oh my God, So I go back and forth on the jerseys because sometimes I watch them, especially in the white ones, and I actually kind of like the orange ones. And I think if they ever started winning, these jerseys wouldn't look so bad. And then for some reason I was looking. Oh, I don't know if you saw this on Twitter. I found one of the camo Justin Gilbert practice jerseys.
Oh my gosh.
That were players only for the 2015 preseason, and it was on eBay for $300. Then it was down to $200, and now it's down to $150. And I've kind of been live tweeting my flirtation with buying it because I would get the name removed probably. But somebody sent me a game worn William Green jersey, and I retweeted it. And somebody said, if that was the jersey from Run William Run, I'd buy that. And so I looked up Run William Run, and they were wearing brown jerseys, and this was a white jersey. But they screwed up changing these jerseys so bad.
They did, right?
And then I started thinking about the 2007 season when they were actually fun and entertaining, and how fun it was to see guys in those jerseys playing a fun brand of football. And unless they switch back, we'll never get that. And it legitimately made me sad that they changed the jerseys.
I miss the real brown. Real brown jerseys and the white pants. And
yeah.
I'm a sucker for that, which speaks to why my friend thinks we need a complete and total rebrand, name change, and everything.
Yeah.
But that'll never happen.
I don't know.
There's too much money in the
nostalgia. So what does this look like moving forward then? Because we said, because I think it needs to be a blend.
Tell me something. Before you get there, what if the Browns win this Sunday?
Oh, people think they might. People think they. What if they do it Corey Coleman scores 3 touchdowns?
This is the shot in the arm that they needed.
Oh my God.
Josh Gordon and Corey Coleman and Deshaun Kaiser.
Hey, then Hugh will be vindicated, I think.
We are such suckers for false narratives and making up storylines as if things are interconnected.
Yeah.
If the Browns win this Sunday, it'll have zero to do with Sashi Brown. In fact, it'll go to speak against the fact that they fired him.
It'd be so Browns for them to win out now and screw up draft position.
I'm so happy we have this place to talk about the different narratives, because having covered the team as long as I have waiting for next year, I feel like I've said everything I could ever say, and I've been an apologist, I've been a harsh critic, I've been been through every phase of covering the Browns, and I don't think that there's any original thought in my head about the Browns anymore.
Yeah, I don't. It's been very tough this season. Once people stopped caring about winning and losing. That was very bothersome to me, that people were just oh, well, they weren't going to make the playoffs this year anyways, and winning's not in the cards until 2018, at which case we would just say the same thing all over again and say, well, what were you expecting, them to go from 0-16 to the Super Bowl? It just really bothered me that people were taking these moral victories over these double-digit losses. That's not the way the NFL works. The NFL is set up for parity. It's not set up for... A lot of people, a lot of the smart Vegas people, liked the Browns over-under wins on the season because there's actually a track record of teams that win 2 or fewer games turning it around the very next year just based on the bad schedule and the draft picks and all of that. And somehow the Browns underperformed expectations from a 1-15 season. And I don't think they should go all in and sign Brian Hartline and Paul Kruger and Dante Whitner. But I've decided I'm only going to judge this team based on wins and losses moving forward, and what their record is what their record is, and I'm not doing another teardown rebuild. And the Browns aren't either. Clearly today signaled that, right. But I am only going to judge this team. I'm sick of handicapping it. I'm sick of grading it on a curve. I am only going to grade the Cleveland Browns on wins and losses.
Well, and that's really what anybody should.
I can't do a sliding scale anymore.
No. And this is not saying that you shouldn't pay attention to some of the deep dives into individual players.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in that.
But the team in general, it can't be, we're developing, and all this playing time for all these rookies is going to pay off someday. Like that doesn't cut it anymore. And to think that you've got the kind of equity, brand equity, organizational equity to pull off what the Browns have been doing over the last 2 years, maybe 1 year.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 year. But to do it 2 years in a row,
no.
That's a horrible miscalculation, and obviously today we find out it cost people jobs.
And I mean that's coming the fatal this isn't the fatal flaw in it, but it was coming off a 3-13 season.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, that's why they started this. So no, you didn't need to. That's the whole point of making the Ray Farmer could have done this. The whole point of making the change is to get better, and they weren't getting better; they were getting worse. And that's the every shred of tangible evidence would tell you that, regardless of the breakdown of individual play.
Can we talk about Moneyball for a second? Because I saw a lot of those quotes from Paul DePodesta when he took the job, and the bravery it takes to commit to Moneyball.
Yeah.
But what was one of the biggest storylines of Moneyball was
talking about the A's version?
Scott Hatterberg.
Right.
Where's the Scott Hatterberg on the Browns?
Jason McCourty.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what his version of getting walks would be, but
no. But I guess my point is that it wasn't just about sucking for draft picks.
Right.
Right. It's not just. It's about finding inefficiencies in the marketplace, and I don't know.
Yeah, that was one. I actually watched Moneyball within the last year because it was actually at the end of last season. I was on a flight back from Phoenix from the Fiesta Bowl, and I watched Moneyball because I was just curious about. I had seen it before, but I just wanted to know more about it, and I hadn't seen it in a while, and it really. It left me concerned about the Browns from that perspective. And I know it's just a movie, but
sure.
The idea of building your team on market inefficiencies and a salary cap sport with an even playing field based on draft positioning and everything, to me, that it didn't seem like that would transition well. And then, again, Scott Hatterberg is 1/9 of the A's lineup. Jason McCourty is 1/22. It's not – I don't – that was always such a weird hire. And so was promoting Sashi Brown from team lawyer to running the football department. Just nothing about this rebuild really seemed the plan was good in theory, we keep saying this, but just nothing, they didn't execute it.
No, they didn't. And whoever was and maybe the scouting is still great. Because again, I don't have a problem with the prospects necessarily. And I think they've made some decent draft picks. No blockbusters, but they've made some decent draft picks, and they've counted on their draft picks way too much. But the fact that they're counting on their draft picks way too much speaks to the roster construction portion of it, and that's ultimately Sashi Brown's failure. And it's not. This isn't anti-analytics. This isn't anti-Moneyball.
No.
This is anti. You got to have the football layer where you know how to build a football roster that can compete week in, week out. Yeah. And they don't have one.
And it comes down to the question we've been asking for 30 years now is quarterback.
Yes.
And that's the whole point of
Did quarterback cost Sashi Brown his job, period, point blank, end of the day?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I think...
Because you even said on Twitter today that you thought Deshaun Watson saves Sashi Brown's gig.
I think so. It depends on, I guess... You'd have to do the whole conversion rate of how Deshaun Watson plays in Cleveland and all of that. But if you at least take your swing at quarterback, and Deshaun Watson looks anything like he's looked in Houston, then you're fine. Like, that's the whole point of these first 2 years, I thought, was to go get the quarterback. And instead, they keep kicking the can down the road and saying, well, 2018, we're going to have the one. You had the one pick last year.
You might be right. But then again, if they pick Deshaun Watson and they still make the same decisions they make on the fringes of the roster with the veterans that Hugh Jackson and his coaching staff wanted, and that rift still forms, maybe my point is maybe this rift, regardless of the players, maybe this rift between those two was always going to happen because of the way it was set up, where they both answered to Jimmy Haslam, and Sashi Brown didn't have to listen to Hugh Jackson. Hugh Jackson didn't have to listen to Sashi Brown because they were both tattling on each other to the owner, and then the owner had to pick which child he was going to drop into the river, like Sophie's Choice. So I'm taking it back, and I'm kind of blaming Jimmy Haslam.
I think
if my kids fight, is it their fault or is it mine?
Depends what they're fighting over. Depends how vicious the fight is.
It's always my fault.
Why is that?
Because I'm their dad. It's my job to parent them.
But what if they just have a disagreement?
Then I did something wrong raising
I think it goes.
You know?
I think it goes to the AJ McCarron trade, which obviously seems like a.
How many factors are we going to identify?
I know. I'm like, well.
It's quarterback. It's AJ McCarron, which are the same thing. It's the roster
By the way,
construction. And
if you were on Twitter advocating for them to keep Sashi Brown and fire Hugh Jackson, and you thought that was a real possibility, like, did you not see when Hugh Jackson and AJ McCarron and Jimmy Haslam were all hugging it out in the Bengals? Like,
that didn't mean anything, Ben.
They were talking about the Iron Bowl. Like, come on, like. Yes, if Jimmy Haslam was going to pick one, we very clearly saw which one it was going to be 2 weeks ago. But because that seemed to be just the point of no return for Hugh Jackson, where it seems like him and Sashi Brown haven't talked since then.
Yeah.
If it wasn't that, it was going to be something else. So maybe you're right. Maybe Deshaun Watson comes in and he balls out, and he wants to trade for a veteran receiver. He wants to trade for Kelvin Benjamin at the trade deadline, and Sashi Brown hides in a closet with his second and third round pick and doesn't let them out. Like, maybe that happens, or maybe
or they won't trade for Miami's Ajayi.
Yeah,
like Philly did.
Yeah, or maybe any number of things, and it would have came down to this. So it was definitely a flawed setup from the start, and. I mean, Hugh Jackson probably won't last past next season. So
here's another thing. Over the weekend, before this happened, GM Street, Michael Lombardi, and Tate Frazier from The Ringer were doing their podcast, and they were talking about the Browns setup. They were talking about the Giants setup. And Michael Lombardi, love him, hate him, whatever else, whether you want him to work for your organization or not, he knows a lot. He's seen it all. He's paid attention to it all for a very long time. He's well connected. If he was designing the Browns today, based on what he said about the Giants, he would say it's always got to start with the coach. Always let the coach hire the GM, because the coach has to coach, and if he doesn't have what he needs, there's always going to be a rift.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people who were saying, you always hire the GM and always let the GM hire the coach. That's not what... And Michael Lombardi is Michael Lombardi, but he's also kind of a mouthpiece for the Bill Belichick way, and this, that, and the other. You know, he's seen that, and maybe Hugh Jackson's not the right coach to do it.
Right.
But I
think it's that you could definitely find cases where that worked.
There's no magic bullet, though.
No, there's no formula for any of it. You know what the formula is? Is pick good players. Find your quarterback and go put good players around him. You look at the LA Rams, that's the common. Like, you look at the Eagles, you look at these teams that are winning now, they all have quarterbacks and they all have good players around them, and that's...
Yeah, name me a coach who won without good players. Name me one.
That's like Browns, there are these fans on Twitter who love Eric Mangini, and it's like Eric Mangini went 5-11 2 straight seasons because he didn't have the players. He might have coached his ass off, but he didn't. He was running fake punts with Reggie Hodges to beat the Saints. Like, you need the players, and that's why I'm so sick of these trade downs. I'm so sick of this asset collecting, because it's like you're the worst team in the NFL. You're always picking in the top 5. Lately, you've been picking in the top 2. Pick the good players there. Give me somebody whose jersey I can buy and not worry about what's going to happen. And I realized they did that with Myles Garrett, but keep doing it. You're still there. And that's what the Rams did. They were at the top of the draft. They just clinched the playoffs, I think, for the first time since 2003. Like, pick the players and go from there. That's look at the Bengals. I keep coming back to the Bengals and how I would love for the Browns to be the Bengals, who have played meaningful seasons probably 9 of the last 10 years, and they don't have a great coach. They have a terrible owner, but they just keep picking good players, and they manage to keep enough of them around that they're competitive. And I don't see any reason why the Browns can't do that following that formula.
Yeah, and sometimes that means you'll keep Julio Jones. Sometimes that means you might get stuck with Sammy Watkins.
Yeah.
But at least you've taken a shot at having that guy who is a mainstay, who's a part of the solution, as opposed to, 4 quarters on the dollar instead of just $1.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's get out of here. But first, I guess, how does what happened today change how you view these final 4 games for the Browns in any way, if they do?
It makes everything more interesting to me. If they were just playing out the string with the status quo and we're waiting to see what was going to happen in January, I don't know why it makes the games more interesting to me, but it does.
Yeah.
It changes. It's like I cock my head to the side like a dog, confused dog. I'm like, all right, well, now what?
Yeah,
But I don't know why.
Yeah. I guess it makes me less likely to root for 0-16 because I was kind of rooting for 0-16 at this point in the season.
Did you see that, by the way? The 0-16, the Perfect Season Parade got fully funded today.
So it's fully funded? I know the Lebitard Show basically funded it last year.
It got funded today, a huge donation by Excedrin.
Wow.
The headache medicine.
That's pretty smart.
They came in, $7,236 or something like that to say, we want to cure your Browns pain or something like that.
That's pretty smart.
It's a brilliant marketing move.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'm less invested. I wasn't necessarily rooting for it, but I also outwardly didn't care if they went 0-16. It's hard to put blind faith in Jimmy Haslam, and I don't think you can do it. No. But I knew this wasn't working, and I think this was a step in the right direction. So at the end of the day, I feel better about the Browns today than I did last night.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Well, that's going to do it for today's 3 Sports Podcast. He's Craig Lindell from Waiting for Next Year. I'm Ben Axelrod from WKYC. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe on iTunes, leave a rating, leave a review, tell a friend. We'll be back with you next week breaking down all the latest in Cleveland sports.